Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, unwanted pets and relatives, greetings and hello. It is I, your favorite borderline libertarian social studies teacher, whose love for free speech might just land me on a government watch list, Mr. Palumbo. And this is the Professor Liberty Podcast. How's everyone doing out there? Thank you for tuning in, folks, across the fruited plains, the tens and tens of you faithful followers, and even across the oceans. Welcome and thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to share this podcast with someone you think might benefit. Maybe your friends, someone in your family, a coworker, your communist cousin who hasn't had a job in 10 years but knows everything about Star Wars. Whoever you think could benefit from this podcast, please share it, and maybe we can convert some of those blue hair creatures out there who for some reason like to go online and screech at us in some strange alien language. If you'd like to email the show, the email is professorliberty1776@gmail.com. I do check the email. That's professorliberty1776@gmail.com. One more time for those of you in the back of the class with your phones out, that's professorliberty1776@gmail.com. Well, folks, it's officially June, which means two things. First, I want to wish a happy Father's Day out there to all the dads, whether you're grilling or finding something that needs to be fixed, or just claiming the remote like a true sovereign of the castle. Have a happy Father's Day and take a day off. Fathers are important. And second, surprise, it's summer riot season already. I was hoping that we could have one peaceful barbecue before the Molotov cocktails came out, but nope. There must be a Republican in office. More specifically, this is Trump 2.0. So just like the first term, we get the mostly peaceful riot season. But today, folks, we're not talking about inflation, or we're not talking politics, or we're not talking about HOAs or economics. Today, we're going to jump right back into the ancient series. We did one on the Romans, and it did quite well. So I thought, why don't we do one again? And so today, we're going to be continuing our series with the Assyrians. Picture this: dusty cities carved into rock, gods demanding blood, and armies so terrifying they made their enemies build monuments to their own destruction. This is the story of the Assyrians, history's original overachievers in the fields of conquest, cruelty, and empire building. They didn't just win wars, they perfected the art of psychological warfare, military logistics, and good old-fashioned fear. So buckle up. By the end of this episode, you'll either be terrified or kind of impressed. Probably both. Let's dive in. Assyria's heartland lay in northern Mesopotamia, in what is now northern Iraq. The Tigris River flowed like a vital artery through their domain, with the first great city, Ashur, nestled along its western bank. As time passed, the Assyrians established other capitals, such as Nimrud and Nineveh, each more splendid and fortified than the last. Unlike the fertile farmland of southern Mesopotamia, Assyria's terrain was harsher, rocky, dry, and volatile. Life here demanded resilience, and the Assyrians embodied that. They were mountain-dwelling people, traders, warriors, survivors. From the outset, the climate and geography forced them to adapt, but soon their survival instincts gave way to ruthlessness. One crucial point to understand is that Ashur was more than just a city. It was a god, a war god. In Assyria, religion and politics were inseparable. The king did not merely rule the people, he ruled in the name of Ashur. His victories were seen as divine, and his conquests sacred. This belief system shaped everything. Early kings like Shamshi-Adad I set the tone, but by the 14th century BCE, the Assyrians had already begun expanding. It wasn't until later, under rulers like Tiglath-Pileser III, that Assyria truly transformed into not just a kingdom, but a formidable empire. Assyrian kings were absolute rulers. The Assyrian king held total control over the military, the economy, and the administration. However, the king's authority was not only political, it was intimately tied to his role as a military leader. Kings were often generals first, leading their armies into battle and personally overseeing campaigns. This reinforced their image as godlike figures, directly carrying out the will of Ashur in the form of military conquest. Assyrian kings were not mere generals. As we just mentioned, they were administrators, leading campaigns, crushing rebellions, and reveling in the suffering of their enemies. When studying the Assyrians, two names stand out. The first was Sargon II. Not content with the throne, Sargon founded a new royal dynasty, built the city of Dur-Sharrukin, and marched through the ancient Near East, leaving devastation in his wake. His military prowess and ambition transformed Assyria into a dominant force. And the other was Sennacherib. Known for his brutal siege of Babylon, Sennacherib didn't just conquer the city, he obliterated it. He flooded it, destroyed it, and then turned his attention to Jerusalem, where his forces came face to face with biblical accounts of divine intervention. But we'll talk more about that later. Assyria is often credited as the first civilization to truly master the art of empire building, setting the standard for military conquest, governance, and imperial control. While other ancient cultures had expanded their territories, Assyria elevated empire building to an unmatched level of sophistication. Central to their success was the establishment of a professional standing army, a well-trained, disciplined force that no longer relied on tribal levies. This professional military, supported by efficient supply chains and a vast network of roads and way stations, allowed Assyria to project power across thousands of miles with remarkable speed and coordination. At its height, the Assyrian Empire stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean, and from Egypt in the south to Armenia's northern mountains. This was no loose confederation. It was a highly organized, centrally controlled empire. Assyria revolutionized logistics, building roads across vast distances, complete with way stations and couriers. Decrees could be sent hundreds of miles in mere days, and troops moved swiftly across the empire, ensuring that no region could escape the king's reach. They pioneered the use of administrative provinces, each governed by officials who reported directly to the king, often through spies, ensuring that even distant territories were kept in check. But what made Assyria truly powerful was its military dominance, which became the backbone of their imperial machine and the template upon which other empires would copy. They were the first empire to fully integrate infantry, cavalry, and chariots into a coordinated fighting force, allowing them to strike swiftly and with overwhelming force. Central to this force were the mounted bowmen, elite soldiers who could strike from a distance while maintaining exceptional mobility on horseback. These archers gave the Assyrian military a unique tactical advantage. They could persistently carry out attacks and disrupt enemy formations from afar, weakening opponents before the heavy infantry or cavalry engaged. The combination of speed and range made them highly effective in both large-scale battles and sieges, where they could attack fortifications and defensive lines while staying out of range of enemy forces. Assyria's military prowess also lay in their mastery of siege warfare, which allowed them to conquer even the most heavily fortified cities. Their siege tactics were legendary. Assyrian engineers developed wheeled towers, which provided cover for soldiers to scale walls. Also, battering rams, some of which were covered in fire-resistant hides to protect them from defenders' fire. The Assyrians also pioneered the technique of tunneling beneath city walls to undermine their foundations, a method that was as terrifying as it was effective, combined with their psychological warfare tactics, where they would relentlessly break down the morale of defenders. These siege weapons were instrumental in the fall of countless cities across the empire. Assyria was a true military machine capable of overwhelming even the most fortified and well-defended urban centers. This seamless integration of mounted archers, siege weapons, and disciplined ground forces made the Assyrian military a terrifying and efficient force, and it was this combination of innovation, logistics, and military discipline that set the Assyrian Empire apart from others in the ancient world. The Assyrians didn't just conquer, they intimidated. What we would call psychological warfare, they viewed as justice. When an enemy resisted, they responded with brutal force. Cities were sacked, survivors deported, and rebellious leaders executed in gruesome public displays. One inscription reads, "I flayed as many nobles as had rebelled and spread their skins on piles of corpses." Another describes impalements, gouging of eyes, and tearing out of tongues. These acts weren't hidden. They were proudly recorded on palace walls and public monuments. The message was clear: resist us, and this is your fate. The Assyrians also practiced demographic engineering, deporting entire populations to prevent rebellion and maximize labor. Yet they also built irrigation systems, temples, and trade networks. The Assyrians were both creators of culture and destroyers of cities. Nowhere is Assyria's fearsome reputation more vividly portrayed than in the Bible. In 2 Kings, King Hezekiah of Judah prays for divine help during Sennacherib's siege of Jerusalem, and miraculously the Assyrians retreat. While historians often cite disease or a strategic withdrawal, the abrupt end to what seemed a certain victory remains puzzling. Sennacherib's retreat from Jerusalem in 701 BCE is one of history's enduring mysteries, with both biblical and Assyrian sources offering starkly different accounts. The biblical version: in 2 Kings and Isaiah, the siege is dramatic. Hezekiah prays, and an angel strikes down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers, forcing their withdrawal. The narrative emphasizes divine intervention and Jerusalem's salvation. The Assyrian record, Sennacherib's annals, omit any mention of defeat. He describes devastating Judah and trapping Hezekiah like a bird in a cage, claiming Jerusalem became a tribute-paying vassal. The lack of a decisive victory hints that something compelled his retreat. Several theories attempt to explain the retreat: disease or plague. Many scholars believe a plague struck the Assyrian army, possibly the bubonic plague, causing massive losses. Both biblical and external sources support this theory. Strategic withdrawal. Some argue that Sennacherib, recognizing Jerusalem's formidable defenses, decided to retreat rather than risk further casualties. His later claims of tribute could have been an attempt to save face. Political settlement. Another theory suggests diplomatic negotiations took place, with Hezekiah agreeing to pay tribute in exchange for peace. This would align with Sennacherib's inscription, which claims Hezekiah became a vassal without a full conquest of the city. Biblically and historically, Assyria is portrayed as both a tool of divine wrath and a tyrant. In the book of Jonah, God sends the prophet to Nineveh to warn of its destruction. Though initially reluctant, Jonah ultimately witnesses the city's repentance, and God spares them. By the time of the book of Nahum, however, Assyria's doom is assured. Nahum 3:1 declares, quote, "Woe to the bloody city full of lies and robbery." As we've seen, the Assyrians were masters of military strategy and governance, but their legacy extends far beyond the battlefield. They were also innovators in art and culture, with their symbolic imagery carrying deep meaning. One of the most iconic examples is the lamassu, a massive, winged, human-headed creatures that were placed at the entrances of their palaces and temples. These figures weren't just art, they were protectors. With the body of a lion or bull, the wings of an eagle, and the head of a human, the lamassu symbolize the divine protection of the king and the empire's power. Though these mythical guardians also appeared in Babylonian culture, the lamassu are most strongly associated with the Assyrians, where they embodied the strength and authority of the empire. This was more than just art, it was a statement of dominance and divine favor. Today, some of these incredible sculptures have survived, and you can see them in institutions like the British Museum in London and the Louvre Museum in Paris, which house lamassu from the palaces of Sargon II and Ashur-Paul II. While some original lamassu pieces can still be found in Iraq, many have been tragically damaged or lost due to conflict and looting, particularly during the Iraq War. Despite this, the surviving examples continue to stand as powerful symbols of the Assyrian legacy. The Assyrians were also prolific record keepers, using cuneiform to document royal decrees, military campaigns, and even daily life, creating a vast archive of history that continues to inform scholars today. Cuneiform is one of the earliest known systems of writing developed by the ancient Sumerians of Mesopotamia around 3200 BCE. The term cuneiform comes from the Latin meaning wedge, because the script was made by pressing a stylus, a pointed tool, into soft clay tablets to create wedge-shaped marks. Their use of cuneiform, found on everything from clay tablets to stone inscriptions, was a tool of governance and communication, linking vast territories through written language. What eventually brought down this mighty empire? Like many great powers, Assyria didn't fall by a single blow, but through gradual exhaustion. Constant warfare drained their resources, while internal revolts simmered. After the death of Ashurbanipal in 627 BCE, no strong successor emerged. Babylon and the Medes rose to power, with former Assyrian victims becoming executioners. In 612 BCE, a coalition of forces attacked Nineveh. The great city burned, its walls were torn down, and the Assyrian Empire collapsed within a generation. What did Assyria leave behind? Certainly, fear. Its reputation for cruelty endured, but also structure. Assyria's imperial model, centralized power, military logistics, provincial governors, and intelligent networks, shaped the future of empires. Their library at Nineveh preserved invaluable records, including the Epic of Gilgamesh, providing unmatched insight into the ancient world. Assyria's influence seeped into the empires that followed, such as Babylon, Persia, and even Rome. The Assyrians showed that terror could control, but also that terror ultimately does not endure.
Here at Professor Liberty, we seek to educate, inspire, and restore. If you like this podcast, please go to Apple Podcasts and give me a 5-star rating. You can also do me a better with the algorithm if you give me a written review. I need some of those guys. Come on. I know there's the tens and tens of you that like this show. I need you to do a little footwork for me, a little marching orders. Please like the show, comment on the show, share the show. If you are a teacher or a homeschool parent, please go to teacherspayteachers.com. I just put a new batch of stuff in there, stuff about Columbus and things about tariffs. These are activities, assignments, and worksheets that you can use in your classroom and in your house to help build critical thinking and learning how to think like a historian and an economic person. And quite frankly, it teaches the kids how to think for themselves. So check it out, teacherspayteachers.com. Also follow us on Facebook, follow us on X if you like it a little spicy. Until next time, go throughout the land and proclaim liberty.